and all of us are present, and Mr. Levine, you may continue.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want you to think I take for granted the fact that you're a captive audience here. And I'll try not to repeat myself or discuss things that I don't think are highly relevant. But understand, we only get one chance to talk to you. Prosecution will have a chance to rebut anything I bring up. So I'm going to try to make sure that everything I think is important for you to make your decision, you have. And then, we took a long time to pick you. So we have faith that when it's all said and done, you'll apply the law. The presumption of innocence, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, because that's our system of justice, and you'll reach a verdict that you can be proud of. All right, I said a lot of things about the affair and about how the conduct of Monica was consistent with someone having an affair and not wanting to murder someone. So again, obviously, number one, sexual excitement, loss of evidence for that, the photos, lots of evidence, and Baker provided that background. And go back for 1 second, Jeremy. One thing that was clear is that he also used Paula McCullum. Now, if you recall, she wasn't a witness in this case, but she was the one who had rented the car for him when his vehicle, he said, was out of order or not working well. And again, another example of him using a woman, because apparently he was able to do that successfully throughout his life, and that's unfortunate, but that's the reality, and he's paying for it. All right, so Monica and Baker meet in December of 2015. Again, for whatever reason, sexual excitement, things just not exciting enough for her. There's evidence of that, and Baker provided, again, well, you can go on to the next one. Okay, here's where we're getting into evidence that the prosecution presented to you that they said was evidence of murder rather than evidence of an affair. So let's go over it. There were voluminous communications via text between January and April 2016. Right from the start, then, they were messaging each other thousands of times a month. This is long before there could possibly have been any plot to kill. No one is claiming that started the minute they started seeing each other and having the affair. And in April, they switched to Viber, and law enforcement only obtained records from Viber for January 2017. So hold on, leave that there. Understand something. This is not under the control of the defense. In other words, the defense only learns it's going to be the defense when it's hired to or retained to represent Monica, and that's in June of 2017. So whatever is obtained by LAPD in their forensic lab is before then is beyond our control. We couldn't say save the messages from April to December. And let's move on to the next. So what we're showing here is how much messaging there was between Monica and Baker at the beginning of their relationship. And right from the start, they're messaging each other thousands of times a month. And you can see that from the slide. And if you go to the next slide, there were nearly 6,000 communications between them in February of 2016. Over 7,000 in March 2016. And when they switched to Viber in April, we don't have records for Viber past this date until January 2017. We'll come into that later. But they sent nearly the exact number of Viber communications in January of 2017 as they do in February and March of 2016. So the pattern and frequency of messaging continued exactly the same throughout the affair. Now that's important because throughout this case, you were told that when they decided to kill Fabio, allegedly, we know Baker did, but when the claim is that Monica did as well, suddenly there's supposed to be hundreds and thousands of more messages between them. That's not true. This just shows a zoomed-in view of the first few months of the beginning of their relationship, sending each other hundreds of messages every day and exactly the same as in January of 2017, long before there was any claim that there was a plot to kill. Let's move on to the next one. All right, I can read as well as you can. The prosecution wants you to believe a large volume of these messages alone is evidence of a conspiracy to kill Fabio. How can that be so? If the volume of messaging is the same nearly a year prior of the murder when there's no claim anyone was plotting a murder. Next. And the messaging is dominated by Baker, not Monica. The AT&T records show that Baker messages Monica twice as much as she messages him. Baker does call Monica, because this was brought out by the prosecution, let's be fair, more than he calls her, but the calls make up a tiny portion of how they communicate, less than 4%. Almost all of the communications is texting, which Baker dominates. Yes, they communicate with each other much more than anyone else in their contacts. This is entirely to be expected as they are having an affair. And if we move to the next slide, you can see the AT&T communications between Baker and Monica. The red is Baker texting Monica, Monica texting Baker, and the green is Baker texting Monica, Monica calling Baker. So you can see the vast majority of the communications on there is Baker texting Monica. It's almost 2/3. And then there's a small portion of Baker calling Monica. Monica texting and calling Baker is over on the left side, and you can see far less than the other way around. Now let's leave that up for a second. That is simply consistent with the fact that Mr. Baker has not much else to do in his life, apparently, than focus in and obsess with Monica Sementilli. It's as simple as that. In red are all the texts from Baker to Monica, and he's messaging her 2/3 of their communications, and that goes on and on. We've heard one of the witnesses say you can convey more communications on a call than a text. Well, maybe that's true, but maybe it's a missed call. Maybe it's a call for 2 seconds. In any case, the calls make up less than 4% of all the communications. It is dominated by messaging, and that is dominated by Baker. Next slide. Monica downloads Viber for the affair. She downloads Viber on April 9th, 2016. Long before any claim of plotting, even by the prosecution's kind of warped sense of timing here, like where they believe it started in July when Austin doesn't even know who Monica is and doesn't meet her until he meets her at the gym later. And Monica downloads Viber before it is even encrypted. Baker downloads Viber 4 months before even meeting Monica. And Viber doesn't announce to the world that it's introducing encryption until April 19, 2016. So, what does that tell you? It tells you that at least up to now, and we'll get to the rest of the messaging, all this communications back and forth, encrypted, not encrypted, all was taking place long before anyone claims, even the prosecution or Austin or Baker, that there was some kind of plot to kill Fabio. This was their relationship, and it was an obsessive one. And why? It doesn't matter. What matters is it has nothing to do with the murder of Fabio Sementilli. And they want you to believe that somehow all this messaging on Fiverr and others, you'll see doesn't change very much at all, if any, when you get to the months where the murder actually takes place. Which means that Monica's communicating the same amount, but it's obsessive. So understand something, and this is important. What this shows is not so much that this messaging early on is consistent throughout the affair and therefore could not have been started because of the affair. It shows you how obsessed Baker is with her. How he has to know where she is every minute of every day. Has to know when she's free and has to know when she's not free. And when he says, I want to see you at a hotel, or I want to see you at my apartment, or I want to see you here, or I want to see you there, she responds. It doesn't say a lot for her and her choice of partners. We've admitted that. But it is not evidence of murder. It is evidence of a sordid, dirty, explicit, hard to understand affair when you consider the background of these two people. But if you consider who Baker is and what control he seems to have with everyone he comes in contact with, including someone like Austin, who appeared to be a pretty normal, decent guy before he committed first-degree murder, then you understand what we're dealing with here. Let's move on. This is June 2016. Deleted emails, itineraries of Fabio's agenda is evidence of the affair. Clearly, it was not evidence of anything other than Monica deleting emails that informed Baker of what Fabio's agenda was. And why would she want those on her computer? And eventually, as you know, sometime later when her sister and mother start looking into her computer, there's a reason why she deleted them, because they realized much too late that she was having an affair with Baker. Okay, then we talk about the security camera upgrade. Now, they made a lot about this and still will, and I understand that. But let's not twist the facts. There was an old security system in place, and Fabio initiated the security camera upgrade. He wanted it. She didn't ask for it. She didn't ask for special this, special that. She didn't ask for upgrades and put a camera on front of the front door. She admitted to that. There was a camera on the front door. For some reason, it should have pinged when Fabio was on the patio looking at the TV. Because they said they came right through the front door. That was a lie. Who said that? Austin. When Austin was trying to convince the DA and you that Monica was somehow in charge of this murder, remember he said, well, Baker told me that she said the front door would be open and gave him the passcode to the safe. Well, by most of the evidence in this case, including that from the police when they came out, they entered around the back through the glass, the sliding door into the bedroom. There's no evidence that they entered through the front door other than Austin saying so. And if they entered through the front door so quickly, and we'll get to the timeline later, why did it take them so long to get to the patio and kill him? You'll find out that they arrive at the scene about 15, 20 minutes at the house before the murder ever takes place. And we know that because Fabio is on the phone leaving a message or talking to someone in his office about a colonoscopy, and God knows where that came from. We'll get to that. Why is he pretending he's having a colonoscopy? Remember when they called and the person who called said, yeah, and he told me everything went fine. He didn't have a colonoscopy that day. That's a mystery that maybe we'll never know. So Fabio initiated the security. Fabio received the proposal and the invoice. Fabio was on the speakerphone when the details regarding the upgrade was being discussed. And the remote access was common and standard at that time. And the instructions were forwarded. Okay. And deleted to hide the affair. that scheming was used on 7 different days by Monica between June 16 and January 17. This began more than a half a year before Fabio's murder, before even Baker's plan to kill Fabio and possibly been formed. So understand something. They're trying to say that somehow this new upgrade in the security system was used and specifically for the purpose of killing him. It was not. They used it before. Baker said sometimes he would look or she would look to see where he was. He was obsessed with her anyway. It had nothing to do, and you'll see how the EVR or the IDMSS has nothing to do on the day of the affair of the murder when we get to that. And again, as it says at the bottom, this began more than half a year before Fabio's murder or any plan to kill Fabio. Can we move on? And also understand, only 4 of her emails were found deleted, and 3 of them had to do with Fabio's itinerary, as we said. All right, let's go on. This is July 2016 in Las Vegas. Monica meets up with Baker, we know, at the Aria. Again, they're having an affair. This is a secret liaison. Who knows if Fabio was out of town? I'm sure he probably was. Doesn't make it right, but it made it convenient. And no matter how much the prosecution wanted this to be true, Austin never saw Monica in Vegas on this trip. And I'm telling you, if you look back at the evidence in this case, they tried so hard with Austin to get him to say he saw Monica there in 2016 in July, and he could not say it. And they put them there in Vegas or at the Aria location at the same time, but never together. They even had Las Vegas police officers, LVPD, in the elevator sometimes and never saw the 2 of them together. They never had evidence from anyone other than they were both in Las Vegas. Is that important? No, not really. It doesn't mean that down the road that they didn't get Monica involved, but they're trying to put them together when they were not. And they tried so hard, and I will show you from the details of the proffer how hard they tried to get Christopher Austin to say he met Monica in Las Vegas in July, and he said no. He was clear. He met her for the first time at the gym when he was introduced to her. As, you know, just, hi, this is Monica, hi, this is Christopher Austin, he's a friend of mine or whatever, at the fitness gym. And Baker introduced him to Austin as a girl he is seeing. Then Austin and Baker go back to Monica's house. Okay. Everyone seems to agree that Baker took Austin back to Monica's house. Now, I'm telling you, if you review the records, and we'll go over that briefly tomorrow, and I promise you I will be finishing tomorrow, you will see that the prosecution is desperate to try to get you to believe that somehow this was a forthcoming. It was forthcoming. It was a preview of what they were going to do, 5 months later? 6 months later? January of 2017? Oh yeah, we're going to take you and we're going to show you that Fabio is outside, and here's where he spends his time, because we're going to kill him outside, even though we haven't decided whether we're going to shoot him or tie him up in bed or do anything. In fact, they end up deciding to try to kill him at the mall the night before. There was no, remember the patio. You know what he says he did? He got there, he had Domino's pizza, got on the couch, put on the TV, and fell asleep. You know what? That's what I do every Saturday. Domino's pizza, put on the TV, football, and fall asleep. And that's what he did. I don't think I've been accused of committing any plot to commit murder, and that had nothing to do with that. But that's what they want you to believe, that everything that Mr. Austin did somehow involved Monica. And it did not. Let's go on. Baker's plans to be together. Remember this? They went to great lengths to try and convince you that Baker's plans were to be with Monica together. Remember Facebook, Baker and Ron Ray, Baker and Michael Spence, talking about, oh yeah, I'm going to end up with her. Oh, a couple of months I'll be with her. You know who wasn't included in any of these private Facebook messages? Monica. Well, wouldn't you think? Well, I'll get on to that. Pure bravado and banter. This is the language that we decided to use. Okay, between Baker and his friends. Aspirational, it's a big word. Purely proves Baker and Monica were having an affair. No evidence of any conspiracy to murder Fabio. And what was interesting is Sheila Salahan tried to say that, yes, Baker was bragging about being with Monica. Eventually, he was going to be hers. She finally admitted on the stand it was only Baker who spoke to her about his plans and relationship with Monica. So hear me out on this. They're trying to say that Robert Baker's plans were to end up and have Monica for himself. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why he killed Fabio. That's the only way it was going to happen. She wasn't going to leave him and hook up with him. She certainly wasn't going to kill him and then say, hey, oh, listen, my husband's dead, but here's my new boyfriend again. Here's Robert Baker. Come on. So he's bragging to his friends, which is not below him, but not in front of her. Well, who cares what he says? I can say a lot of things about, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to take my wife to Tahiti, I'm going to buy her a new house and a car. The question is, will I say it in front of her? And then she'll say, well, yeah, well, when are you going to do that? Saying and not in her presence means nothing. Why did they even put it on? Because they wanted you to believe that because Baker wanted to end up with Monica and said he would, that Monica wanted to end up with Baker. And then they want you to jump to the conclusion that not only did she want to end up with Baker, she wasn't above killing her husband. That's an awfully big leap. That's an awfully big leap. You know, for a while they were telling you how you should feel sorry for Christopher Austin because he had no prior record, no history of violence or anything. But what did Monica have? Did she have 3 ex-husbands who all died mysteriously? Did she have any background or record of anything other than being a loving wife who threw parties and went on trips? Look at, I'm sure their relationship wasn't perfect. No one's is. It's a long way from not being happy in your relationship to conspiring with someone to knife your husband to death in cold blood. That's a big leap they want you to make. But is it a big leap for Robert Baker, you think? Or as it turns out for Christopher Austin, it's a little jump. A tragic little jump. Let's go to the next slide. Now, Mrs. Baker, I think we covered that. Everything with Mrs. Baker was, I submit to you the idea of Mr. Baker until they ended up in jail together, and then I think she would have done anything that she wanted. Look at the actual plot to kill Fabio begins 2016 in the Hollywood holiday period. We talked about this. Monica and Fabio's family came down to visit. She was busy with him. Baker did not see her enough, and he alone begins his actual plot to murder Fabio. Let's leave that up there for a second. So understand something. It didn't take eight years and 9 weeks of trial to prove that Robert Baker and Christopher Austin killed Fabio, and they planned it out and they did it. But you have to look at all this evidence and decide what connects Monica to the conspiracy? Because you will see from the jury instructions we already went through and we will go through, that it must have evidence, independent evidence of just conversations. And they're not even conversations between Monica and Austin. One of the people in the conspiracy, Baker, says it never happened. All right, you can believe him or not believe him, but you certainly can't use it to prove it happened. And the other one, all he can say after they drag it out of him is, oh yeah, I did it. I don't know why. Baker asked me. And you know why I did it? Because he said, I need your help. And you know what my proof is that Monica was involved? It's kind of like what they told me really in the cell in the Perkins thing. You better get her. They need her. They need that bitch. She's the only one left to go to trial. And what does he come up with? Does he come up with a recording? Does he come up with a signed confession? Does he come up with anybody who saw them together alone plotting? Do they have even a phone call between him and Monica? My God, they got every phone record of everybody in the world almost. Nothing to connect Monica to Austin. But Austin said, Baker told me she wanted him dead. Baker told me it was for insurance. Baker told me this is how it was going to happen. Baker told me. Did you meet with Monica? Never. Did you talk with her? Never. Did she tell you anything? Never. And that's the evidence they want you to convict her of a first-degree murder. Okay, so we've talked about the holiday period and why Baker says he decided he had to get rid of Fabio. And now we look at the January 2017 fiber record, which we have. So the pattern of messaging, as it says there, was consistent every day in January. Exactly the same as the pattern of their messaging at the beginning of their affair in early 2016, where there's no allegation of any planning to kill. So there's no increase in communications between Monica and Baker in January of 2017. Let's go on. The prosecution has drawn your attention to the separate communications between Baker and Austin, and then Baker and Birdsong and Monica on January 11th to the 13th. Let's go back. We're not going to get there yet. Listen to this, because I jumped ahead. The prosecution has drawn your attention to separate communications between Baker and Austin, then Baker and Birdsong, then Baker and Monica on January 11th to the 13th. Now understand, these are separate communications, which are supposed to be, according to them, proof of the conspiracy. Not communications between Austin and Monica, Austin and Birdsong, Austin and Baker, Baker and Birdsong, Baker and Monica, but there's no evidence that any of Baker's communications with Monica had anything to do with Baker's separate communications with Austin and Birdsong. And as we have seen, Baker and Monica are messaging each other hundreds of times every day. So of course, no matter what day Baker has communications of Boston and Birdsong, it's going to be a day when he's communicating with Monica. So it's not a coincidence if he is messaging Monica every day, which he is. In other words, Baker and Monica communicating, let's say, 150 times a day. That's in July 2016, June 2016, whatever. Now we get into to June of 2017. Now the murder is going to happen. And Austin and Baker are communicating. So on a day when Monica and Baker are normally communicating anyway 100 times, 150 times, Baker also is communicating with Austin or Birdsong about the murder. Just because it's around the time he's communicating with Monica doesn't mean she's in on the calls or that he's relaying anything on the calls to her, because they're communicating the same number of times anyway. The only addition is he's communicating with Austin and Birdsong. That's the only difference. Well, then you got to ask yourself, well, what about these three-way calls? Were there three-way calls? There is no evidence of three-way calls, communications at all, between Monica and Austin, Monica and Birdsong, Monica and anyone, or three-way calls with anyone on that day. In fact, let's go on. Throughout all of the records of all the devices, there is no evidence of any three-way calls between Baker, Austin, Birdsong, and Monica. No evidence of any three-way calls between any combination of these people. Now, hear me out on this. This isn't my strong suit, science and communications, but this is what the evidence showed, and this is what we heard from the experts. And you want it reread, you could have it reread. I'm just telling you what the experts said. We've heard from 3 different prosecution data expert witnesses. They've combed through thousands of pages of phone records, but couldn't find one of these three-way calls which Austin spoke about. Remember, this is the ones when he said, well, maybe there was 1, and maybe there was 2, maybe there was 3, and that's when he had the private conversation with his own attorney, and then suddenly it was possibly there were more. The prosecution told you how important it was to look for independent corroborating evidence of what witnesses say. Well, where is the evidence of this for what Austin says about three-way calls? Where? Austin said there were three-way calls. Data expert testified. Where did they say that this is evidence of three-way calls? And we know that the records show 3 calls where the records overlap, because you've heard there was a three-way call between Monica, Bella, and the eye doctor on the day Fabio was killed. And yet they couldn't find one of these crucial three-way calls showing the planning of the murder because it did not happen. Let's go to the next slide. This is what the prosecution said. They didn't use this beautiful picture of mountains, but they said there were mountains of planning. Okay? This is what someone with a sense of humor in the office said was the actual mountain, was a little dirt pile. That's just our way of trying to be cute, and you can forgive us. But where are the mountains and mountains of evidence? There's barely any planning between Baker and Austin, and absolutely no evidence of any planning involving Monica. All you have is Baker and Monica having the same level of communications as they had throughout their affair. Let's go on. Okay. January 22nd, 2017. This is, if you recall, the day before the actual murder. Baker picks up Austin from the airport. Nothing to do with Monica. Baker and Austin buy knives. 1 knife, 2 knives, who knows? I guarantee you, if you wrote a message, and I'm not encouraging you to do that because it doesn't make me friends with the reporters, please play back or read back to us all the times Austin mentions knives. You will find he goes from 1 to 2 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to different shapes, different sizes, different place. Walmart, no, he got it at home. No, I own my own knife. He is all over the place because he doesn't know what to say. Now, he does have a knife, right? He stabs Fabio. Baker has a knife, right? So why is he talking about buying 1 knife? All he has to say is, I don't remember. We each had a knife. But he's trying to say what they want him to say. And when they show him this knife that they found in the Mustang, which has nothing to do with this case according to Detective Gable, and show it to him, he says, yeah, there it is. That's the knife. Okay. So whatever knives they have and whatever they look like, and it all changes, Baker and Austin go to the area of the faux restaurant. and the murder doesn't happen. Now, before we get to the next slide, let me talk to you about this faux restaurant and this attempt the night before. What's interesting about it is neither Austin nor Baker ever talk about this all these years, or in Vancouver. I mean, in Vancouver, when Austin is supposed to be telling the truth, and he's even talking to the Perkins guy, he doesn't mention that he tried to kill Fabio the night before. Well, I don't blame him. Fabio's not killed. No one really knows about it except Austin. Fabio goes, picks up whatever food, goes back home. It fails, and he says, Baker, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Well, you know what? I wish he couldn't do it the next day either. He could have hopped on the next plane when he realized what was really being expected of him and just flown home. Oh, I couldn't afford, really? He didn't have a credit card. He's been living up north with his wife and kid and works in a parole office. He can't get a ticket back to Alaska a day early. What hold does Baker have over him? Huh? Is he blackmailing him? Is he threatening to kill him? I will not understand that. So, they go to the area of the faux restaurant, the murder doesn't happen. Let's go to the next slide. Now, remember, Fabio took the faux restaurant and initiated the first text to Monica. Okay? Now, they claim that Monica deleted the phone message from Fabio because why have proof if he really is murdered that night that she had a message or that he forwarded it to her? That is completely false. You look at the records, that message is not deleted in the records. Monica cleared all of her web history, not just the web history relating to Faux. So yes, she was clearly deleting web histories all the time involving Baker. But they wanted you to believe that this was Fabio, his message, which identified the faux restaurant, which would have then led Monica to calling Baker or texting him and saying, go, you can kill him now. And then she deleted it from her records. She did not. Plus, they arrived hours before Monica and Fabio even began communicating about Faux, which is inconsistent with Monica assisting anything. So, remember, they have the ping. They're able to see where the car is, where the phones are. Austin says that if you listen to his testimony and have it reread, if you don't remember, that this all occurred around 9 o'clock in the evening. It was dark when he went there. Well, the records show Baker and Austin there at 5 o'clock. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. They're there because he's trying to figure out where Fabio is going to be that night. He talks to Monica constantly. If Fabio's gone or goes out, who knows? Maybe that'll be a good night, maybe it won't. But it's not based on Monica saying, go kill him. If that was the case, then she would have said, at 9 o'clock, he's coming. Not at 5 o'clock. Why does he have to wait there for 3 or 4 hours? None of that makes sense. I'll tell you what happened. Baker, as obsessed as he is with Monica, finds out that night, that Sunday night, when he asks her, what are you doing tonight, says, we're going to be eat home. Fabio will be going out for dinner and picking up dinner. Okay, where? Faux, whatever. And he says to Austin, hey, let's go kill him. And you kill him. You kill him. Not Baker. You kill him. Baker wants no part of Fabio. And he figures, let Austin do it. And if it doesn't work, Austin can't squeal on him because he was part of it. So the point is, yes, They did go there at 5 o'clock, waited 3 or 4 hours, and there's all sorts of conflicts as to where they parked, but it's 8 years ago, I get it. And apparently, Austin goes out there and decides, I'm not going to do this, and goes back and they go home. Okay, nothing ventured, nothing lost. But where's the evidence that Monica was part of this? None. None. Because they're jumping to the conclusion that every time Monica talks to Baker, which is 100 times a day, that it always has something to do with the murder. Well, clearly it does not. He is using her, as he has throughout their relationship, to find out where Fabio's going to be on this day or that. He even says he gets a tracker. He has records of buying one. Who the hell knows? The point is, there's nothing to connect Monica to the murder except Austin saying Monica called Baker, who told me Monica said he's going to be there, let's go kill him. Well, why didn't he say that before? You know when he says it? After he meets with his attorney and after they're in the proffer and they're talking, they have a break or whatever, and then he comes out and suddenly he's talking about the night before. I'll tell you what happened. His attorney said, you ain't been too valuable on this murder. You got anything else? And Austin says, yeah, I tried to kill him the night before. Well, that's good. We can use that. That comes from nowhere. For 8 years, that was not investigated or known. So ask yourself, what does Baker say about this? Fair question. Remember, Baker will not snitch on Austin. Never has, never will. So it doesn't come up in any of our conversations with him, interviews. He doesn't mention it. He talks about this crazy Jaybird and all the rest. But when we go to him and say, you got to hear this now. Mr. Austin has just confessed to going there the night before. Is that true or not? And he says, yeah, that's true. But it didn't work out. Well, why'd you do it? Well, this way Austin does it. I don't have to do it. And so what happened? Well, I came back to the house and then stuck around, and the next day it worked out. Baker won't snitch on Austin unless Austin says it first. Whatever you think of that, the point is it has nothing to do with Monica. And let me close with this, if I may, Your Honor. You heard, and we'll go into this tomorrow, you heard that the first time Mr. Dawson and I visited Mr. Baker, he had a letter that he had written to Monica and wanted it delivered. Well, that's not our role to let inmates communicate with each other. But we read it to her, turned it over to the DA and the court. It's an exhibit here, and it's full of lies. He's trying to say that he was going to drop a card, a greeting card, a birthday card for Monica, or something, Valentine's something, and was going to the house to do that, and he took someone with him, and just to be a lookout. There was no plan to kill anybody, and he thought Fabio wasn't going to be home, and he couldn't put the card down, or he put it down, and then as he was leaving, Fabio was there, and Fabio kind of attacked him, and he was defending himself, and he ended up killing him, and he blacked out, and he doesn't remember much of it, but it wasn't a premeditated murder on his part. He writes a letter to her apologizing for the manner in which Fabio was killed. And as the DA points out, it was full of lies, and we knew it, because that's not what the physical evidence showed, that Fabio attacked anybody, and it certainly wasn't an accident, and he certainly wasn't acting in self-defense. But he wanted her to believe he didn't do it on purpose. Well, doesn't that raise one question? if Monica Sementilli conspired with him to kill her husband, why the hell would he write a letter to her apologizing? She knows it's bullshit. She was part of the plan. Unless she was not part of the plan. And then we'll go into that more tomorrow if we figure it out.
Thank you. All right, we'll take our adjournment till tomorrow at 9 a.m. As always, the admission applies not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else in form or express any opinion until the cause is not submitted to you.